101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, developing a long-term, short-term rental industry. And in the second watch, counting the disabled. For our social media question, we ask, which would you prefer for your vacation, short-term rental or hotel? And state why. We're asking you to share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel. And also on WhatsApp, 876-997-3125, using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's our quote.
All right, today's I quote says, let's pull it up. It says, "They are not Robin Hood. They are robbing your hood."
Okay. Good morning, Jokal.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm great.
All right. The first watch will be back after this break.
Happy be a man, got to be a man. On the next episode of The Mailbox, we will explore the topic managing pressures as a man. Mental health remains one of the most pressing challenges of our time. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people globally will experience a mental health condition in their lifetime. In Jamaica, 3% of the population lives with a depressive disorder. Let's hear from guests, Reverend Dr. Courtney Faulkner, founder chairman of Talk About It Limited, and Dr. Paul Smith, clinical psychologist. The Mailbox is brought to you by Solid PVC Pipes, manufactured in Jamaica by Fosrich Company Limited. That's Wednesday, March 12 at 5:30 p.m. only on the family station. Love 101, celebrating 32 years of sharing hope, touching hearts. The Mailbox, Monday.
You ready?
Get ready to shine a light on the brightest stars in gospel music.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Welcome to Center Stage, the ultimate destination for exclusive interviews and inspiring stories from the gospel music industry. From legendary gospel artists to rising stars, from producers to industry experts, we're bringing you the inside scoop on the people who make gospel music happen. Join us on Center Stage as we delve into the hearts and minds of gospel music's finest. Discover their passions, challenges, and triumphs, and get ready to be inspired.
please welcome
Join me, Nadine Blair, inside Center Stage with Nigel Wilkinson, Saturday, March 15 at 8 p.m. I wonder what I'm going to ask me. It surely will be fun. Don't miss it this Saturday, March 15 at 8 p.m. on the family station, Love 101.
It's about to get real, man.
Center Stage every first and third Saturday evening at 8 o'clock inside the Gospel Music Machine with me, Nigel Wilkinson, on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, with the growth of short-term rental spaces, the traditional hotel business, at least in Kingston, seems to be getting a fight. All-inclusive hotels are still being built in the resort areas, and there are reports of record highs for visitors to the island. Now, what could account for the difference? Well, to discuss these matters, we have online Gabrielle Gilpin Hudson, first vice president of the Realtors Association of Jamaica, and she's a real estate broker, as well as Christopher Henry, attorney at law. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Good morning.
Great, good to have you both with us. Gabrielle Gilpin Hudson, what constitutes short-term vis-a-vis long-term rental?
That's a spicy question. I think in this context, what we're really talking about are short-term rentals in the sense of you're coming there to basically be a boarder. So you're coming to spend usually a few days to weeks. In some instances we see persons spending a lot longer than that, but
Mhm.
generally speaking, even though we use the word rentals, these kind of stays are not rentals in the sense of when you enter into a lease agreement to stay somewhere for 6 years, a year, 6 months, or a year, two
Mm,
years These are more intended to be temporary, and
mhm,
so the legal arrangement of it and the rights associated with it are a lot different from an actual rental that is longer term, like 6 months to a year, 2 years.
Interesting. So when you go into the 6 month region, you're going into long-term. That's the understanding.
Generally speaking, yes, correct. Especially from a realtor perspective. So some realtors do assist their clients with finding rentals that are maybe for 6 months. That's
Mm,
usually the minimum that we assist within our capacity as realtors.
mm,
And from there, usually it's a year or 2 years longer term, with your standard residential kind of or commercial considerations.
interesting. Christopher Henry, from a legal perspective now, apart from the obvious, what are some of the major differences between short-term and long-term contracts?
Some of the morning, everyone, and morning, Dylan.
Yeah,
Some of the major differences, I think Mrs. Gilpin Hudson highlighted with the time difference.
right,
Long term would be for a longer period. The short term would be for anything less than 6 months.
right.
Also, there's no form of feeling or in the clauses of residency. So there's less freedom in short-term rentals, for example, to do certain repairs or to do certain alterations to the property. You wouldn't find that
By,
in short-term contracts.
by freedom, you mean obligation on the part of the landlord?
Right, right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the landlord would maintain a lot of his as if he was still owning it in short term contracts. In the long term contracts, for a long term tenant, you would see them taking on a more maintenance and structural repair role
Mhm.
than would be in the short term. Those are the major differences between the two.
What about the obligations to the tenant? Is it also less for the short term vis-a-vis the long term?
Yes, it would be less because they would be seen more of a as a guest rather than the long term tenant.
Correct. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on
Yes,
the head there, Chris. That
yes.
that these type of rentals are really kind of you're not necessarily a tenant, you are an occupier. You have a license on certain contractual terms. It's a contractual relationship. Whereas when you are a rental of an actual tenant of a long-term situation, you have more rights, you have an interest in the property. When you're just staying as a short-term rental, it's based on in contract for that period of time that you have booked based on the terms and conditions of your booking.
I'm happy you mentioned terms because I wanted to ask Christopher Henry as we drill down. What are the terminologies that are used? The word tenant is not used for the short term. I mean, if not, what is the word or what are the words used?
I think the better word used is, as Gabriel said, is occupier
Or guest.
or
But
guest.
what is used in the contract for the short term?
It
Yeah,
depends
you
on your
can. It
contract,
depends. Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
it does. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on the language that you want to use.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so, for example, too, a lot of people would use the Airbnb platform as the mechanism for them getting bookings for short-term rentals. That platform has its own terms and conditions that apply to the
Precisely.
relationship. So
Interesting.
sometimes it depends on the platform that you're using. Some people don't use a platform and just do it themselves. So what we're seeing is that there's no real standardization per se. It just depends on the terms of that particular arrangement or platform, or what your terms are if you're doing it
Interesting.
yourself.
Yes,
Yes,
interesting.
exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Gabriel Gilpin Hudson. Is it a fact that there's a growing demand for short-term rental arrangements? And if so, why is it?
So I would say that insofar as investment property is concerned, a lot of persons have recognized in the real estate industry that you can get a higher return on your investment if you're using the property for this purpose, especially in resort or popular tourist areas. For example, if you have a North Coast property, that's near to a beach, or even, in Kingston and St. Andrew, business travelers, or
Mm,
sometimes even in rural areas, persons want to come and visit family and there may be no hotel options. So from that perspective, persons, are interested in buying real estate for the purpose of operating this kind of business. Even though it's not for everybody, it takes a lot more effort on you as the operator than, for example, if you just buy a property to rent it long term. So long term rentals, your regular residential or commercial rentals, those take a little bit less effort as the landlord, and are grounded in a different set of laws versus these kind of properties that, you're going to either need a property manager or somebody going in and cleaning it, preparing it, getting it ready for your next guest, marketing it, all of those things. So it's a trade-off, but persons do really like the amount of money that they're able to make from it, because usually your per night revenue from it is higher than a long-term tenant.
Yes.
right. You are confirming that the demand really is growing now. Gabriel.
Yes, I think so. And I think also from the guest perspective, persons are attracted to the idea of those kind of rentals because, especially for like families or bigger groups, it offers a little bit more flexibility than staying in a hotel, perhaps.
Mm,
Sometimes it's more affordable than staying in a hotel. And as I said, sometimes people want to stay in areas where there are no hotels and near to family. So say you come down for a funeral,
yes,
and you
yes.
can't find a hotel near where they're having the service or where your family lives, and you find an Airbnb in that area. Perhaps I using the word Airbnb loosely, right? But that could be a better solution for you than going and staying at a hotel. So because of that, and this has been going on for years now, right? I want to say at least the last perhaps maybe 8 years, we've been seeing this industry kind of continue to, it's not going anywhere, it's steadily increasing, and with platforms online making it so easy to rent your property.
Yes. Gabriel, you still with us? Gilpin Hudson, still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Right. And the last part of your sentence just went. Could you repeat it, please? I don't think I heard it.
Sure. I was saying that because it's so easy to rent your property online now because of these platforms, that has what has made it kind of grow in popularity. Originally, a lot of people did it through travel agents, or they did a website for themselves, or booking agents. Now you can just go online and set up a profile,
Yes,
and
yes.
you're an
Yeah.
operator.
Right. We're up on a break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll soon be back.
Doing more on the go. Discover a new and convenient way to send money abroad with the GK1 app. Download GK1 from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to send with Western Union today.
The time by Grace Kennedy Remittance is
Just about 7:16 a.m.
In life, the more you have, the more you have to lose.
The more you love, the more you worry. The more you own, down, the less you sleep.
The more people rely on you, the more you have on your mind.
I have peace of mind.
Knowing that whatever I own
and whoever I care about are covered by the very best.
with Sagicor Life and Advantage General, get life, health, and general insurance to help you protect what matters most.
Well, if you want buy appliances for your home with the quality high and the price low, get it on a Basco. Get it on a Basco. Everything with the need, Basco. It's like a need on a Basco. Get it on a Basco. Get it for your home and get it on a Basco. Looking at the light, we've been here for 25 years and we are
Guardian Life.
getting started. Leading the way, protecting you and yours at every stage.
Guardian Life.
Looking at the light, caring for family, caring for you. Looking at the light, there's no way
For every generation, for every stage, your partner for 25 years. Guardian Life.
to.
You're invited to listen to a live post-budget interview with Finance Minister, the Honorable Favor Williams, this Wednesday, March 12 at 11:30 a.m. on Love 101 FM. That's a special post-budget interview with the Minister of Finance, live from the studios of Love 101 FM, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And this is the first watch. We are looking on at the development in terms of long-term vis-a-vis short-term rental industry. And in so doing, we have online Christopher Henry, attorney at law, and Gabriel Gilpin Hudson, first vice president of the Realtors Association of Jamaica. Welcome back to both of you. Christopher Henry, as a lawyer, what are some of the major concerns you have in terms of this trend that Gabriel just confirmed in the rental industry?
In putting it into perspective, to me there isn't a concern. I think what needs to be done is to amend certain legislation to accommodate as well as to regulate this now expanding industry. I don't think there is really a scare in the industry. I think in real estate on a whole, because what is happening is that most of the properties that are used are within what we call strata developments, and the bylaws of the various strata developments tend to handle the situation whether or not they want short-term rentals. And with that, I think that regulates it, as well as if there are standalone properties that are used as Airbnbs. I think the Rent Restriction Act and other acts could be amended in order to accommodate the short term. So I don't really see an issue or legal implications coming from it. I just think that we need to come up to speed or come up to the time with our legislation and to embrace this new form of commerce and rental while still protecting long term and ensuring that certain rights are given to occupiers as vis-a-vis the long term tenant.
Yeah. You mentioned the need for amendment with certain legislation. Can you at least give us one example where you think it needs to be, tightened, controlled?
Well, for example, we have left one of the major examples that came up this morning was the time frame in which you're deemed long term as opposed to short term. I think that needs to be set into law explicitly. Right now, as it stands, we are relying on case law, on decided cases to determine what is long term as opposed to short term. I think for example, the Rent Restriction Act can speak to a time frame in which you are considered firstly under the act, or you're also considered a long-term tenant. So we need to put that plainly and outspokenly as to what exactly is a short-term tenant versus a long-term tenant.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned the strata developments. I'm sure that over the years I've come across news items where there are concerns even within the strata, because persons will say that they when they bought their homes they didn't plan for this, where you have parking issues.
Yeah.
Just come in and go and come in and go. I mean, how are we going to deal with all those issues?
You see, that is something again that the bylaws of the various stratas have been designed to handle, and the Commission of Strata Corporations is there to help enforce the bylaws, and the courts are as well. So that part is pretty strong. It's just people to take it upon themselves, well, not upon themselves, but take the matters to the strata commission and to the regulatory bodies to enforce their bylaws. So if the bylaws said no short-term rental and this is the assignment for parking, that should be followed. If it says short-term rental, well, you kind of have to blame your lawyer, because your lawyer should have tell you, say, hey, the bylaw, short-term rental is in this strata.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yes. I follow you. Gabriel Gilpin Hudson, any concerns on your part as a realtor?
Sure. So I think adding to what Chris said, at the development level, or when you're buying into a development, it's very important. And I think it's a matter of education to check to see what the rules of that development contemplates, right? Because a lot of persons don't realize that short-term rentals may be allowed or not allowed. In the case of some of the older developments, what had happened would be that they had their rules in place before contemplating that these things might happen there. So they don't have a rule for or against per se. And it may be that they need to come together as a community and decide if they're allowing it or not allowing it, and get the requisite legal advice to update their rules. Another concern is that there are no real standards of operation, and there's no regulation or oversight of the persons who are conducting this type of business, right? Which is, I think, some of the calls in the media in the past have been, okay, are we going to regulate this industry? Are we going to tax it, in the sense that, what are the minimum standards of operation? Do you have a fire extinguisher in the property? Do you have a first aid kit? What happens if persons are aggrieved, if it's not cleaned properly, things like that? Right now, you don't necessarily have any standardization or registration or recourse for that. Another thing happening is that in Jamaica, to be a property manager, you're supposed to be licensed with the real estate board. And what you have happening is that a lot of persons, as a little hustle, have taken it upon themselves to manage properties for other persons on their behalf. So essentially conducting property management business in operating their properties for them in this way, which you need a license for, and a lot of these persons are not licensed.
So, like a lot of there. And Gabriel Gilpin Hudson, I'm happy you mentioned you went down the road in terms of taxing, because I had it down to ask you about that. How is that regulated? How is that determined? The taxes.
It's nothing is there right now specifically addressing that situation. In a lot of other countries or jurisdictions across the world, the short-term rental platforms themselves deduct the taxes or add the taxes onto the guest stay automatically, so that it just
Right.
goes straight to the government. Here we don't have that right now. And really what it is just that if you're making income from this, technically speaking, you're supposed to be filing your income tax return and
Right.
reporting it as income. So that's the only kind of, off the top of my head, tax obligation that you really have at the moment.
Yes. Legal perspective on that, Christopher Henry?
Yeah, there is a need for as I said earlier, the amending of the legislation, as well as an integration with Airbnb to collect the tax right off the top. You should be declaring.
Example, Christopher, 'cause as you know, you have other
I
organizations, right?
know, I know, but it is the most popular one, and I,
Yes.
I, I, I do not think that, in fairness, I think it's probably and Gabriel can correct me if I'm wrong, it is about probably 5% that do use Airbnb when I'm doing short-term rentals, or less
I see.
than that.
I see.
So
It's
I
true
think
that
there
the
needs
majority use that platform.
Yes.
exactly. So there was an attempt some years ago to regulate timeshare, which is another version of short-term rental, but it hasn't picked up the necessary steam, and I think
For those who
it's
don't know, Christopher, sorry to cut you. What is timeshare? For those who don't know.
oh, timeshare is where you buy. Uh, I don't want to use back the words, but you buy a certain amount of, well, for one, a share in a property, and you're allotted a certain stay at the property and amount of time. So it's vacation. It's usually used in the vacation industry,
Mm.
um, and it is usually like an apartment, etc., or some property. So or in a resort. So it's you're sharing time, for want of a better word. But
Okay.
for some reason, the timeshare, there's no, at the moment, and I can be corrected. At the moment, there are no registered timeshares. There was a glaring loophole in the legislation about vacation clubs, and it has been used by practically every player that uses timeshare. So, as I said, some amendments and the like need to take place.
Hmm. But these phrases, vacation, club, timeshare, they all amount to the same thing when you drill down.
In
Yes, it
that
does.
sense, it's different
In a
ways to
sense.
different similar things dressed up differently, with different rights associated to it. But just to go back to the tax question for a second, I think one of the reasons why that's contentious as well is because, in our hotel industry you would have room tax,
Yeah.
and things like that, and right now I think that's a sore point because there is no similar tax on this industry, right? Another thing is that if it is that we're going to regulate the industry, it begs the question, where is the money to regulate it coming from, right?
Mm.
And usually the taxes or license fees or things like that are what would fund a proper oversight body for the industry.
It's a chicken and egg situation because if they don't do that, then they won't get the taxes from the persons, the landlords, in the long run. Correct?
Pretty much, pretty
Yeah.
Yeah,
much.
yeah. So a number of people are actually in this industry now, growing industry, not paying any taxes in that regard. So they're smiling all the way to the bank.
Pretty much,
Hmm.
because
Pretty
as I
much.
said, unless you are doing the right thing and reporting it on your income tax
Yeah,
returns,
yeah.
and nobody is checking per se, going on the platform to say, I see you have 10 properties up here.
As we wrap, what are your suggestions or recommendations to those seeking to enter and benefit from the rental industry and benefit in a legal way? Beginning with you, Christopher Henry, in less than
In
a
a
minute.
legal in less than a minute. I just want to say that ensure that everything is in writing and that a proper contract is put in place, and that you clearly delineate the difference between the long term and the short term. And if it's short term, that you make sure that you maintain and keep the premises so that you can be successful in it, as well as you do not go beyond the necessary rights to be given to your short term tenant.
All right, let's share. Let's have time share now. You, Gabriel Gilpin Hudson. Same question. Same question.
Same question. So I would really strongly advise that in your searching for a property to use for this purpose, that you use a realtor to help guide you and let you know about the area and the trends. Also understand whether or not you're in a position to operate it and manage it yourself, or if you need to find a property manager to do so for you.
All right,
Um,
time
and
out.
from the legal perspective, as Christopher said, very important to do your due diligence and understand if you're actually even allowed legally to use the property for that purpose.
Well said. Thank you so very much for joining us, lady and gentlemen. Have a safe, productive day.
Thank you, you too, and to your listeners.
Great. Listeners, the morning watch will return in just a moment.
We got
Time by Gem Bank is
7:31.
Women standing tall and strong. Sagicor celebrates International Women's Day all month long. For her day, her deals. 7,500 bonus points on new Sagicor Bank credit cards. Special rates on auto loans and mortgages. Discounted trading fees from Sagicor Investments. A free dash cam or tire inflator with Ultimate Women Auto Insurance from Advantage General Insurance. Plus, tailored products like our Sagicor Life Total Women Life Insurance Plan. Accelerate action towards financial empowerment. Call 888 Sagicor. Conditions apply.
Life is on the go. But you got the strength with on the saddle that you need to go. Takes you out to the time anywhere. You need every day and night with the best that you see side. No challenge you can fight with friends like Boris. Driving by your side. Immediately to you. Friends with bonus sardines are packed with omega-3 and ready to eat right out of the can. Try the hot pepper, the delicious olive oil, or the new spicy fried chili on its own or on a cracker. However you like it. Friends with boneless sardines. Snacking made easy. Snacking made healthy. Snacking made tasty.
Mama work hard, for real. To be the most to send me and my brother go school. So, the dream was always to go to university. Well, I fulfilled 2 dreams with 1 Jane Bank savings plan, you know. Further my education, and I make mama proud.
Stop wishing you could. With your Jane Bank savings, you absolutely can. Jane Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing in the Observer. Christian groups condemn death threat against 40 days for life leader. Also in the Observer, good news budget. Williams rolls out electricity, income tax benefits, and more. In the Gleaner, $1 billion government initiative coming to boost uptake of prepaid electricity and also to combat theft. In the Gleaner as well, Philippine ex-leader flown to The Hague to face charges of crimes against humanity. And then finally, in Luke News, personal income tax threshold to increase to 2 million, and Jamaica and Guyana are among big winners at, is it Patwa Awards? I want to hear more about that. Those are some of the stories in our newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. Which would you prefer for your vacation, short-term rental or hotel? And state why. We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
You're invited to listen to a live post-budget interview with Finance Minister, the Honorable Favor Williams, this Wednesday, March 12 at 11:30 a.m. on Love 101 FM. That's a special post-budget interview with the Minister of Finance, live from the studios of Love 101 FM, the family station.
On the next episode of the Mailbox, we will explore the topic managing pressures as a man. Mental health remains one of the most pressing challenges of our time. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people globally will experience a mental health condition in their lifetime. In Jamaica, 3% of the population lives with a depressive disorder. Let's hear from guests, Reverend Dr. Courtney Faulkner, founder chairman of Talk About It Limited, and Dr. Paul Smith, clinical psychologist. The Mailbox is brought to you by Solid PVC Pipes, manufactured in Jamaica by Foxbridge Company Limited. That's Wednesday, March 12 at 5:30 p.m. only on the family station. Love 101, celebrating 32 years of sharing hope, touching hearts. The Mailbox, Monday.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join Jokal for a look at how our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answered today's question: which would you prefer for your vacation, short-term rental or hotel? State why. Jokal?
All right, so I have a response here from Cherry in Spanish, though. We just got another one as well. So this one says, for a vacation, it depends on the type of vacation I need. For example, if it is a family vacation for a certain occasion, a guest house would be more suitable than a hotel. If you want more privacy and the cost is flexible, well, it offers more privacy, that is, and the cost is more flexible and manageable. Marjo just sent in her. She said, I would prefer a hotel. There, I would not have to think about cooking and have time to enjoy myself versus being in the kitchen cooking and no time to relax. So, yeah, we have that. I mean, you do have some Airbnbs that offer shifts.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Yeah.
Good. I want to thank both persons for the responses. We appreciate it. Now, as we segue into the second watch, in a recent Gleaner report entitled Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities Wants Census for Persons Living with Disabilities, the executive director reportedly stated that there is need for more data on disability in Jamaica. So what really is the situation in that regard? Are persons living with disabilities really being counted as they should be? Or how much do they really count? And to answer these and other related questions, we have joined us so far Dr. Christine Hendricks, Executive Director of Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. Good morning to you, Dr. Hendricks.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
I am doing well. Thank you so very much for asking.
Yes, good to have you on our program again. Now, Dr. Hendricks, your organization has reportedly stated that there is more to be done. Actually, I believe you made the statement in terms of having a specific census done on persons with disabilities. Now, if that is correct in terms of the report, on what basis was that statement made?
Okay, so the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, as you may be aware, or others who may not be aware, is the government arm of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security that became a statutory body in 2022, February 14, based on the effective day of the Disabilities Act. And our mandate is to ensure that there are policies in place, that the Disabilities Act is implemented right across this island, and that the rights of persons with disabilities are upheld. Now, over the years, as far back as 2001, I can recall that census recorded 164,000 thereabouts persons with disabilities living in Jamaica. At the time, that represented about 6.7% or so of the population. The next census in 2011, there was not a disaggregated data, and so we were not certain what the number was. The limited data that was collected represented about 3%, which means that there would have been a reduction, which would be impossible if it is that more people are meeting in accidents, there are non-communicable diseases, you have persons who are acquiring disabilities more than those who are being born with disabilities. And the WHO statistics indicates that between 15 to 17% of the population in developing countries should represent persons with disabilities, usually represent persons with disabilities. Now, if we're saying between 15 to 17% of the population, that would put us at about 450,000, 500 and something thousand there around in that range.
Yeah.
There is no data that we have that indicates that to date. All the information that we have is indicating maybe those with severe disabilities only. Not only that, we recognize, and quite a number of our stakeholders have indicated that when the census comes around, when persons come to a house that they are at, there is never a question about whether someone lives there with a disability. I have a disability, and that question has never been asked of me, of a census worker that has come to my home.
Yeah.
And so, if that is the case, it therefore says that there are a very large, a very vast majority of homes that that question is not asked, because there are assumptions, I believe, that are made when perhaps you go into certain communities, or maybe you look around, and if you don't see a disability that is visible, then it is assumed that no one with a disability lives there. And so that question is not asked, or is not asked to very many persons.
Yeah.
And so it is a conversation that we've been having with Statin over the years, and more recently they have indicated their willingness to support once funds are available. And so it is something that the council will have to address, along with our other partners and stakeholders, Ministry of Labor and Social Security, because data is critical.
Yeah.
Without the data, without knowing who the people are, where they are, the type of disabilities that they have, what their needs are, what conditions are they living in, we cannot adequately plan for the population. And so the JCPD has a database, a registry, and by law, we are mandated to maintain a confidential registry of the particulars of persons with disabilities. Currently, we are digitizing the records that we would have had over the years. And of the over 48,000 persons in our database, only about 17,130 persons have completed the registration process. And that means too that we're still, even with us registering, we're still not getting all the people that need to complete the process, and have them as part of our database to be counted, to be planned for. And so the funds that we get would only meet the needs of the minority of the persons that we have in our database. But we have a large number of persons who are desirous of getting assistance. And if it is that we do not know that you exist, it is impossible to plan for you. And so the budget that the JCPD receives would not have considered those that we do not know about.
Yeah.
And so I want to, use this opportunity to appeal to or churches or family members or communities, or service clubs. Once we recognize families with persons with disabilities, to encourage them to register. While we work on one hand, for starting to get that census, going, and for us to get the funds to get that going, we can galvanize Jamaicans, to really help us, to get persons registered. I know that there are times when persons will say that they register and then what? But as I will say, until we have your number, until we have you as an individual and understand, have the information, then planning becomes difficult, and budgeting therefore will fall short of the real need.
Yes, hearing you loud and clear, Dr. Hendricks. We are up on a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about this.
When you see opportunity, make sure you take it. So when I got a piece of land to grow things, I can take it. My Jane Bank small business loan, I do the opportunity. We take whole new life for my family. Now my good supply plenty now have it across the parish. Jane Bank helps you grow your business with a Jane Bank small business loan that is perfect for you. From 10,000 up to $1.5 million to help cover expenses. Visit janebank.com to get started today. Jane Bank.
Faith in Action. At the Church of God, 7-Day 58 Maxfield Avenue, faith isn't just something we talk about, it's something we live. From meaningful worship to life-changing messages, we're a community where your faith can grow stronger. Come grow with us at the Church of God, 7-Day Maxfield Avenue. For more information, contact 876-855-1113 today.
Febreze. Imagine getting home after a long day and it smells so amazing that it makes you smile. Try Febreze Plus, an air freshener that delivers continuous scent for up to 50 days when you plug it in low mode. Indulge in wonderful scents for weeks with Febreze. La, 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 la.
You're invited to listen to a live post-budget interview with Finance Minister, the Honorable Favor Williams, this Wednesday, March 12 at 11:30 a.m. on Love 101 FM. That's a special post-budget interview with the Minister of Finance, live from the studios of Love 101 FM, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. In this, the second watch, we have been focusing on persons with disabilities in terms of the census. And we have online in the first part of this discussion, in the second segment, we have Dr. Christine Hendricks. She's the Executive Director of Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. And I gather that we now have online Andre Witter, CEO of Ready to Sign. And with Andre, we have Ben Brathwaite, who is an interpreter for him. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Now, Andre, let me just ask you, what are some of the challenges persons with disabilities have and face when the census is being taken?
Well, in my experience,
I'm sorry. Let me just because for the listeners, they need to know that you might have a little pause because interpretation is taking place when the questions are being addressed. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. Yeah, so in my experience working in different communities, I've seen the same problem again and again. I've noticed that sometimes people feel that they give information, but they might feel that that they have personal information that they don't want to give, or there's data exact for each area on how many deaf people there are, how many hard of hearing people there are, where people live, where they were born. That kind of information that people might not feel comfortable sharing. Be clear why people are gathering that kind of information. So I think it's very important that you have awareness being provided to people in different communities, people in more rural communities, in St. Elizabeth Parish, what's going on and why that kind of information is being gathered.
Yes.
So depending on
yes, and Andre in particular, could you tell us about some of the challenges you have faced if you have ever experienced your census being taken?
Me? Yes, I have had some challenges before. So when I lived in St. Elizabeth, we didn't really have access to information at all. In my family there, people didn't really have information about disability numbers. JCPD took up a disability awareness program. That was really the first time that I heard anything about the kind of work that was being done. And they traveled to different communities, helping with education and gathering data. and helping to explain why that information is important.
Okay. And for listeners, I gather that Andre has a hearing impairment. All right. So we are having Ben, who is doing interpretation and also speaking on his behalf. Okay. So let me now go to Dr. Christine Hendricks. Doc, you mentioned earlier that the statistics are reduced from 6.7 to 3%. Could it be that there's a correction, therefore, in the figures, that the second figure is the correct one and the first one was inaccurate? I'm just wondering.
Sorry to laugh, but
Yes.
as I indicated, it's almost impossible because the 6.7 was being questioned as to whether or not in 2001 that
Mhm.
was even the correct figure. And as
Mhm.
I indicated,
The WHO.
the WHO figure is
15 to
usually
17%.
closer, right? Is usually
Mhm.
closer to reality than not. And what I know though is that the census of 2011, and I believe the one just recently done or is being done, they included questions about disabilities. However, based on the information that they would be collecting, they would be only getting mainly those persons with very obvious disabilities or those with severe disabilities. And so there would be a vast majority of persons who have mild disabilities or moderate disabilities or do not consider themselves as having a disability or invisible disabilities that are not accounted for. And so it could not be that there is a reduction. And as I had indicated, there are more persons who are meeting in various kinds of accidents. Motor vehicle accidents or crashes have increased. Persons are getting more spinal cord injuries, or there are non communicable diseases, even more than there were in 2001. And so it could not be that there is a reduction. I would want to see a census that is specifically for persons with disabilities. If it is that the instrument is, they do not want to make the instrument too bulky, too large to capture all the information on persons with disabilities before I would believe that there is a reduction. There isn't a reduction.
Yeah.
In Jamaica would be a rare case.
An exception. Let me ask you that. There are persons with disabilities that you talk about, the physical and all of that, and I'm sure mental disabilities.
Right.
Right. How would that be captured in this census? How you capture that information?
Well, once disability is defined, and there is a definition in the Disabilities Act. I am not sure of the definition that the Statistical Institute utilizes. And so there would need to be a standardized definition that is utilized right across so that we know the categories that we are talking about. And in Jamaica, we have the four broad categories. So we have physical, mental, we have intellectual, and we have the sensory. And the sensory would include persons who are deaf and hard of hearing, or persons who are visually impaired or blind. And so those five overarching categories are the disabilities that we're talking about. For persons with intellectual and mental disabilities, many times they are not captured, except those in the severe cases, because persons sometimes with mild intellectual disabilities will not admit that they have a disability. But if it is that an assessment is done, there would be a recognition that perhaps the IQ is below the level that it should be, which would make them fall into that category.
Very interesting.
And so we would need to know how to position ourselves, because even in the provision of information, if we have a society that has a large population of persons with intellectual disabilities, a lot of the conversations that we have, whether on television, on radio, that we put in pamphlets and booklets, and many of the persons are not understanding. And so there is no wonder that certain things would happen, and so it is important to know who it is that we have, so that we can pitch our conversations at a level, we can put our information in simplified format and versions that
Yes.
the ordinary Jamaican would understand and be able to participate in a fulsome way.
Yes. And as you mentioned, participation. Andre Witter, how big a deal is it for persons with disabilities to have a specific census done, would you say? How big a deal and why?
Yes, I think it's really, really important, because if you want to get the right information and the right numbers, you need to provide support. You need to know where people are. You need to know in which areas. It's really important that you have accurate numbers, and I think that that's an important way of doing it.
And Andre, if with the concerns raised so far in this discussion, can you describe for us how those concerns feel? That the figures are not where they ought to be right now.
Well, for me, I feel that the numbers aren't accurate, and I guess in my perspective, when someone came to my house, asked me a lot of questions, asked me for a lot of data, I felt under pressure.
Under pressure.
That I needed to share all of my personal information, and I felt a little uncomfortable. I remember when that happened. So in the data gathering, we see that apparently there's this reduction in numbers of people with disabilities, but I think that that's unlikely to be the truth of the matter. I think people sometimes have attitudes about the word disability. People feel that the disability is a very stigmatized word, and if you use that word, then people will sometimes not want to identify as disabled themselves. So I think it's important that we think about what words we use. We think about how we can connect with communities and different groups of people in order to help people to understand the purpose of the census, and in order to give people a more positive view of what is happening. And I think if that happens, then we might get more accurate data on people with disabilities.
Yeah. Dr. Hendricks, the process of census taking. For example, online now we have Andre signing, and then we have Ben, who is doing the interpreting. Do you think we'll ever reach the day when census takers would be able to do this more, or have an interpreter accompanying them in the process?
You know what would be ideal, Sir Toussaint? If from our basic schools, sign language is taught, similar to how English is taught. If sign language is learned from a child up, then we will have a generation that sign language is just part of your life. And so you would not need others even to speak on your behalf, because there would be an understanding and people could have general conversations. We would like to see a Jamaica. I'm hoping, I don't know if I will live to see it, but my generation, the generations to come, we live in a society when there are more people who can converse with our population of persons who are deaf than not.
That's so
Because
very
that would solve so many problems.
We're very sorry, Doc. I know you're going on to a very interesting point there. But we want to thank you all for joining us this morning. Dr. Hendricks, Andre Witter, and Ben Brathwaite. Have a safe and productive day to you all.
Thank you so very much. You too. Bye, Andre.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This, of course, has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dallin Toussaint, returning you to Love in the Morning.